Hello, everybody. Once again, thank you for joining us for this second segment of our symposium. Thank you for taking your time out to be with us and to also just share your knowledge with us. So our second is of what two panelists are Tapiwa Lukuta and Queen Rafi. Tapiwa is a human rights defender and a social activist whose key interests are in governance, youth, and women empowerment. And she's an inspiration to women in Zambia. It's so interesting because in one of the groups that I'm in, they're discussing the issue of menstrual leave in Zambia, and you know how Zambia has created this lovely blueprint for us as African countries on menstrual leave. That's just a little random fun fact. And then we've got Queen Rafi. You know, when I was seeing this, I was like, I need to be more active. If I'm talking to a podcaster and a radio presenter, I need character, I need to be as exciting as she is when she's on air. So she's a radio presenter and a podcaster with over 6 years of experience hosting both daytime and nighttime programs. She's passionate about creating conversation around world research topics with the aim of educating targeted listeners. And we're really talking about this free flow of information. So this is such an exciting panel that we're about to get into. So to start, let's get back to you, Tapiwa. Tell us a little bit more about your work within the gender space, gender equality space. Tapiwa, over to you.
Thank you so much, Danai. Are you able to hear?
Yes, clearly.
Okay, great. It's firstly such an honor to be a part of this very intelligent panel. I've learned a lot from the previous panelists, and I'm very excited about more that I'm yet to learn by having these conversations. So my work in gender equality is one that I would say is indirect, in the sense that most of what I do is in the hope that it can inspire action from duty bearers. It can inspire action from the community as a whole, and it can also inspire action from my peers with regards to making the playing field level for everyone. So initially, I was voted or elected as the very first female president of one of the largest tertiary institutions or universities here in Zambia. It had not been done yet. It's true. Thank you so much. But yes, so I was really privileged to be elected as the very first female president, and I think that it initially came from a good place of justice. One person who does not hold back with talking about that injustices or inequalities, like so. That was the basis of my stand. But it really sort of created a platform to explore and to also learn the challenges that actually come with females in leadership, and having that first-hand experience really opened my eyes to see how real these situations are. I do recall that earlier on in the conversation, in the last panel that we had, it's just that I had a few network problems, but I did hear a conversation that was just speaking to how, well, it's just always talking about girl empowerment, women empowerment, what about the boy child, and so forth. And I always get these questions. But actually, but now having that literal experience of the very real challenges that females face, especially when they're ambitious, especially when they have a drive, it's actually, as some lady once said, it's a lose-lose situation for most women. So for me, I then learned that, whether we are ambitious or whether we have a laissez-faire approach to certain matters, we still somewhat get attacked on the basis of being this particular gender, which is being female. So my work then stemmed from that to also try and mentor young ladies who had ambitions to do certain things, but were being held back either by extrinsic forces or intrinsic forces, such as identity crisis and things like the imposter syndrome and so forth and so forth. So that's basically where I started. Then from then on, my work in activism has really broadened from then on, because I work more with just youth participation and involvement. So that's both males and females. But in that, I've had an opportunity, or I have been privileged to work with Plan International as this quarter, they're basically focusing on having more young women in governance, having more young women in political spaces and in leadership spaces, which speaks to what I am very passionate about. So I do that. And then I'm also a champion under the Gay Alliance. So the Gay Alliance is the Girls in Education. The advocacy for girls in education in rural areas. So I'm a champion under that, and I'm also interning with NACARE, one of the NGOs that are trying to foster getting more girls in schools, because the numbers are staggering as to how many have been excluded. Then I think that's just basically it when it comes to my work in gender equality spaces, as well as fostering SDG 16 in my work.
Thank you for that, and congratulations on your appointment. I mean, it's an important time in history for young women in Zambia, particularly young women in the tertiary institution. I'm going to ask the same question to Queen Rafi. Tell us a little bit about your work within the gender equality space.
Okay, thank you very much. You've done an amazing job moderating so far, and it's been nice being here. My name is Rafiat Akimwande. Most people know me as Queen Rafi. I have been a radio presenter for a couple of while now before I dabbled into podcasting. And even far back as when I was on radio, it was important for me to have programs that were designed around women. We used to have something called Not Just a Pretty Face, which I participated in sort of like going out there to do research about for like the BBC Media Action back when I was on radio. So we had radio dramas trying to inform young women of their rights, of their rights and how they can sort of level up as well, because there's a bit of a gap when it comes to the gender equality situation in Nigeria, and young women are lacking a whole lot because of the conditioning and the kind of education that women have is geared mostly towards finish, go to your husband's house. And we had programs like that when I was on radio, trying to make sure that ladies realize that they could actually be so much more. Like you could be so much more than a wife, a mother, and you could actually advance yourself in school and you could go to school. And also because I grew up in Northern Nigeria, saw a lot of young Northern Nigerian women who at the age of 12, 13 were getting married off and didn't understand that there was a life outside of that. So that was as far back as how I started in terms of the gender equality space when I was on radio. And then when I left radio and I started to do my podcast, starting my podcast as well, it was important for me to share my own experiences and also talk about my own, the ways that I have been able to conquer the things I have done, talking about self-development for myself and talking about how I've been able to advance myself despite being married, despite being a Muslim woman, because all of that can constitute some sort of barrier for you in Nigeria in terms of advancing what you are. People would look at you, as a Muslim woman, some people have the idea that you should not even be seen, you should not be seen, you should not be heard, you should just be locked up in somewhere somewhere. So it was important for me. For example, on my podcast, I have a series that I do where I speak to Muslim women who are between the ages of 18 to 40, who are excelling in the technological space, because that's a space that a lot of times young women don't feel like they can excel in. But I have a segment, I call it Sister Sit Down. So we talk about how these ladies can excel in those spaces, and not only excel in those places, but also excel as a Muslim woman, as a Nigerian female, just excel in those spaces. So I have a couple of episodes that I do like that. And it's always been nice when I hear feedback from like young women who listen to it and they say, listening to this really made me realize I could conquer these spaces. And I also talk to those women as well, link them up with other young ladies that they can help to mentor and, help to make them realize that, they can do this. Because what I've realized is if you don't see an example of what you want to do or what you aspire to be, it can be really difficult for you to even think about those things. It's like what you don't see, you really cannot aspire to. So for me, it's always about showing these women that there are women who have done these things and there is nothing that can stop you from doing that. And that's majorly what I do around my work. I also try as much as possible to not just focus on like, the women in my own age group, but also younger ladies as well. And that's also because I have a younger sister who I love very much, my favorite person. So she's also made me sort of want to dabble into that situation. So I find myself mentoring quite a number of girls and just talking to them about, what they can do, how they can advance themselves, and also tapping into opportunities that I did not even know existed when I was in the university. I don't think a lot of young women who are in university realize the amount of enormous scholarships and opportunities out there that they can take advantage of. So I'm always making sure that I, talk about that. I also use my social media platforms to talk about those things as well, so that even if you're not listening to the podcast, they have a way to also get to listen and see that on my social media handle, because I've realized that in the space that I occupy, a unique space, if I must say, because like I said earlier, I'm a married Muslim woman in Nigeria, a young one at that. A lot of people do not think that they can advance beyond the level that they see themselves. So I put it upon myself to actually show what I do, talk about what I do, the challenges, and just let them realize that this is very, very possible. So those are some of the things that I have done, a bit of mentoring as well. I've also done a couple of work with the foundation that's the initiative that's currently doing this as well. We did a bit of mentoring, I think last year, with a couple of young ladies, and that was also really amazing. And also in my work in podcasting, I have mentored quite a number of podcasters who always come to me and say, I want to be able to express what I have within myself. I want to be able to, become a radio presenter, or I want to be able to start up my own podcast and stuff, just have my own voice. Because I feel like having those various voices on there, online, is so good for the morale, and also most importantly is good for the next future of ladies that we want to have in society. And I also do something with my friend. She has a YouTube channel, and she's also into a couple of other things, and together we have something that we do every month, where we sort of have young ladies around, and we just sit with them and just listen to what kind of career problems they're having and how we can guide them. And mostly that's kind of like ladies who are interested in the media and voiceover space, because that's exactly what I do. So I try to mentor them and try to just let them know that, okay, you can do it this way, you can do it this way. These are the mistakes that we've made, and these are the ways that you can sort of advance yourself beyond those spaces. So yeah, those are some of the things that I do for myself, and some of the things that I do for some organizations as well. And I do hope to do so much more. I have plans to be able to do so much more, but right now, those are the ways that I have sort of been able to stamp myself in the gender space and make sure that we bridge the gap.
Thank you very much. Something that has been sticking out to me as I'm listening to both of you speaking is the importance of representation. There's that statement that says the personal is the political. So for someone needs to see themselves, someone needs to see the potential out there that I can do this. And it's important to have, someone they can look up to. It's important to have these indicators and these markers and these people in the spaces that ordinarily are not occupied by people that look like them, so that they know that it is possible, so that they can see themselves as being capable of being part of that. So that's such an amazing thing that we have both of you to speak to us in this panel. So my first question is going to go to you, Tapiwa, is why do you feel the free flow of information and high levels of human capital are important to gender equality?
Okay. Thank you so much, Danai, for that question. Okay, so in particular with or in particular to what's happening in our African setting, I'll just speak from my observation. We're faced with a really big challenge in the sense that we are shaped, or our ideas are actually shaped by what, and most of us are exposed to social media, most of us are exposed to the internet, we're exposed to just various sources of technology. And this goes a long way in terms of shaping our ideologies and shaping our beliefs to a very large extent. The unfortunate thing, however, I feel is the censorship, the massive censorship that is there when it comes to media. And I then think about what exactly is, or our women, or how exactly are women actually portrayed on our social media, and how is that actually shaping the narrative of who, or of the place of a woman, what she's capable of doing, and who she is. I feel to a very large extent we have been reduced to, or what can I say, to being objects. We have been really, really objectified in the sense of what we see on social media and what is there. If we talk about the latest music videos, how are women being portrayed in those music videos? If we talk about more so in politics, where we rarely see women being given an opportunity and a space to speak out on certain matters. So this then leaves a very small pool of inspiration for the girls who are out there who would want to do something with their lives, because all they see is media that has not yet been engendered, if I can put it in that way. So so I feel that the existence of a free flow of information is something that is very key in terms of fostering gender equality and ensuring that we put out the right messages out there that will shape the right ideas about who or how a woman should be. Then when we talk about the high levels of the pillar on the high levels of human capital, like I said, I'm under the GEAR Alliance. So the GEAR Alliance is the consortium of, I think now we're 10. There are about 10 NGOs that are working under this consortium in Southern Africa. And it came about as a realization that there actually aren't a lot of deliberate efforts in terms of ensuring that young women, and adolescent girls are put in school. Unfortunately, because of so many other factors, there hasn't been much effort in terms of investing in the human development, as African countries, particularly when it comes to developing the girl child. So, and the best way, obviously, there's this statement that education is the greatest equalizer, right? So, and unfortunately, we've seen that there are not enough deliberate efforts in terms of ensuring that our young girls are in school and that they're being educated. Chenga gave really good statistical evidence as well that speaks to the high levels of child marriage that still exist till today. So such things really pose a threat in terms of protecting the girl child and ensuring that she's able to thrive. Because if she does not have the weapon of education at her disposal, then it reduces her to just being a homemaker, which is not a problem. There's nothing wrong with that. But if there's more untapped energy that we've decided to overlook because of all these other barriers, then it becomes a really big problem. So when we talk about equality and we talk about and we talk about human capital, for me, the first thing that comes is ensuring that we have more girls in school, ensuring that there are more girls who are educated, and that they at least have a chance to try. They have a good shot at trying to have a decent life for themselves, because when they don't have that opportunity to be exposed to opportunities that are available out there through education, or the opportunities that education offer for them, then it leaves them with a very small, with very few options in terms of what they could do with their lives. So yeah, those are just my 2 cents, Danai, on that particular topic.
Yeah, I think that you've really just gotten us into the flow of the conversation. That's exactly where I want us to go. Just, the lived realities and the examples from your own personal experiences and the work that you're trying to do. I think it's important for us to visualize things practically. And I'm going to pose the very same question to Queen Rafi. Why do you feel the free flow of information and high levels of human capital are important to gender equality within the space that you're operating in?
Yeah, thank you very much for that question. And yeah, Tapiwa really, she really, really hammered on the education and career part, and I will not bother to go to that angle anymore. The free flow of information is actually very, very important, especially in a country like Nigeria, where a lot of women don't know about their rights, especially when it comes to economic rights, and also, most importantly, rights that concern their bodies and their health. So the free flow of information would really help women to be able to make informed choices, not only about career paths and education, just like Tapiwa explained, but also about our health and our body. Like in a place like Nigeria, there's so much about a woman's health that is like hush hush, don't talk about it, don't say anything about it. And these are things that women go through every single day. I realized I wanted to carry out a particular test in Nigeria here, and I couldn't find anybody to tell me about the experience that they've gone through doing this particular test. And this is a test that even when I was at the lab, the day I wanted to do the test, I saw like about 3 other women coming to do the same test. But because we've been taught to be hush-hush about our experiences, to be hush-hush about things that happen to us and our bodies as women, especially in a country like Nigeria, where I'm from, women are not talking about it. It's like, oh, that's a taboo subject. Are you going through infertility? Are you having serious menstrual cramps? Are you dealing with, conditions that, other women have gone through? But you cannot even talk about that. We talk about miscarriages and so many other things, and even teenage. This is why we find that in Nigeria you have ladies getting into like situations of like teenage pregnancies, because even to have the conversation of sex education with us as young women, it's a taboo subject. Your parents, your mothers are not talking to you about it, your sisters are not talking to you about it, but everybody knows about this. It becomes this mighty elephant in the room that nobody's talking about. So the free flow of information is so important for women to be able to make the very right choices when it comes to their health, when it comes to also like economic decisions as well. A lot of women are a lot of people in Nigeria are below the poverty line, but women more so are even suffering because they are not even they don't even know that there's some certain loans that are available just for women alone, because they don't know about this information. It's not talked about on radio. It's not talked about enough in the media. And which is why I sort of, left the radio space and sort of moved into like the podcasting space, because there's less censorship there. Right? On radio, I remember there was a time when I was on radio, I wanted to talk about the conversation of marital rape. And by the time I was done with my show, my head of station was like, why did you have a conversation like that? Like you could have done that's like it. I'm like, but this is something that is happening to women in this area. Why should I not be able to talk about that? But if I do that now on my podcast, nobody's going to come and ask me why I spoke about that. And I was glad that I spoke about that, because a lot of women didn't even understand that that was a concept and that they even had a right to fight against that, right? So I think that when it comes to the free flow of information, it really helps women to be able to make choices that affect them directly, and knowing that they are 100% responsible for those choices that they are making, and not just because they've just been told this is what you have to do, and this is how you have to go about it. Even when it comes to the conversation of like maybe contraceptives, that's another place that you shouldn't even talk about. Like, oh, don't talk about it. Why should you talk to young women about that? But we have to talk to young women about that, because young women are getting involved in these situations, and it is making young women a bit backward, because if a young boy and a young girl, were to engage in teenage sex or something, we all know that the lady is going to have a lot more consequences to deal with than the male. And it's important that she understands this, and she understands the opportunities that are available to her. She understands the choices that are available to her. But they don't want this. But because there's a lot of censorship around this, they don't want that free flow of information. But thankfully, we're getting a better society now in Nigeria, where we have more podcasters coming up and talking about their experiences, and young people actually talking about things and letting young women know these and these and these are the things that you can do. These and these and these are stuff that you can actually do for yourself, and how you can actually get yourself exposed, and how you can actually make choices for yourself. Most importantly, right, is also in the area of holding our government accountable. Like in Nigeria now, we are really, really lacking. Women representation is really lacking when it comes to politics. And a lot of young women do not even understand that they can actually go ahead and vie for this position. Not too long ago, Nigeria sort of put into bill the not too young to run bill. They actually passed that. But you find out that we still have a lot of women that are yet to take up that opportunity. It's mostly men that are taking up that chances to do stuff. And it's because women are thinking to themselves, if I take this up, are they really going to vote for me? What are my choices? Am I allowed to do this? For example, you have people, I'm a Muslim, for example, you have people who would tell you that, oh, Islam says a woman should not be a leader, but that's not true. That's not the right information. And because young women listen to this information, they tell themselves, oh, okay, I don't want to go against my religion. I don't want to go against my people. So I don't even want to vie for that position. But if they had more information, if they knew much better, if they had quality education, they educated themselves very well, they'll be able to understand that they can actually vie for those positions and they can do amazing. We have, organizations like Elect Her that are really doing so much to bridge the gap, but we are not there yet. And if we had free flow of information, if people realize that they are just as capable as, putting themselves up for these positions like men do, we would have a lot more balance, and we'll have a lot more fantastic bills in the House of Senate, for example, passing. I remember there was a time just recently they were talking about passing a bill in Nigeria for women being able to give our citizenship to if you were to marry somebody. But that bill didn't even pass. Why? Because majority of the people that were sitting in that room were men. They didn't even see the need for why a Nigerian woman should also be able to bestow her citizenship on someone else. But if women in the room, they would understand that, and they'll understand why that is important. The other time I heard you, our moderator, talking about Zambian women getting menstrual leave, I was like, take me to Zambia.
Exactly.
Like, that is a bill that I'm sure if it came up, people would be like, what? Why do you need that? I mean, it's just 3, 4, 5 days. Is it that serious? Is it that stressful? But menstruation is a really serious process for some women. They go through a lot of things, and it's almost like you're supposed to just hold this pain in and take it in and be okay with it, because a lot of women don't have the information. There's so many things that I'm finding out now that I'm grown, and I'm like, why didn't anybody tell me? And my sisters are like, oh, but yeah, we knew. I'm like, so why did you keep quiet? So the flow of information is not even just from the media, it's even around us as sisters, as mothers. Like, that free flow of information is definitely important, because it helps women make better choices about their health, like I said, and better choices about their economic situation, and better choices about who they are spiritually, and just feeling more and more included in the policies that are made by the country that they are in, by their government. And if there's some sort of discrimination, they can also speak about it, because women can recognize, okay, this situation is not okay. I can speak about it. But if you don't even have the information to even realize that what is happening to you is wrong, how do you even fight against that discrimination? So those are one of the reasons why free flow of information is important. I remember there was a time in Nigeria where there was a march around the markets to talk about, we didn't want to be, I don't know what's the word it is now. Like, there's a really serious situation where you go to the market and you have this man just dragging you, trying to sexually harass you and stuff like that. And they had a whole march about it. And women were bringing awareness to that and trying to say, this is something we don't want to experience anymore. And you have to listen to us. But if those women did not even understand what was happening. How would they even be able to do that? The NSAS protests that happened in Nigeria as well, where we're talking about, you know, we didn't want to be discriminated against by the police force and a certain part of the police force unit. Majority of the people that headed that particular protest were actually young women. They were the ones in charge of coordinating this protest, making sure that, you know, the protesters were on point, the protesters were where they were supposed to be, they were organized, they weren't causing any mayhem, they were protesting peacefully. And the majority of victims that actually suffer from this discrimination we are talking about were actually men. But women were the one championing this. And the only reason why those women were able to champion that, direct that, funding and all of that is because they had enough education, they had enough information, and they realized the danger of what was happening. So free flow of information is very, very important, because if women had that, we will be able to make more better choices about our health. We'll be able to make more better choices that would help us economically, that would help us spiritually, that would also help us in fighting against discrimination and becoming more involved in government policies and programs.
Thank you. That's such a holistic and just analysis of the whole question. And there are like two key things that I just want to bring forth. One is access to information. Two is decentralization of access to information, so that it's like accessible to more people through various modems, like various sources of information. So I know, like back in Zimbabwe, in some communities, you see posters, you see, and because there's a lot of people on WhatsApp, there are a lot of WhatsApp messages that are being shared, there are Facebook groups. So like that decentralization of information is very important, and also that independence is very important. So I'm just going to go back to Tapiwa and just ask, you know, in your journey when you were pursuing student leadership, what kind of information was coming out? Like, how were you able to access this information to say, you know what, I want to be a student leader? You know, because I know that a lot of political spaces on a macro level, that is a national level, even a global level, there is a lot of male dominance, right? So obviously, even in unis, there's also a lot of male dominance, or like male-centric initiatives that like promote political participation. How did you manage to access the information? And do you think that other girls are able to access information, or did you have some other support that enabled you to get to the place that you were at?
Thank you so much for that question. I've never actually really thought of it in that lens in relation to the information that I was exposed to prior to learning the section. But in retrospect, because this was about 2 years ago when I studied, in retrospect, I actually do think that my ability to access this information did play a role in terms of helping me gain more confidence to stand for such positions. So I was the only female out of 6 male candidates. And sorry, out of 6 candidates, I was the only female who was standing at that time. And what had been the word around, and I think this is actually quite common, even at the macro, if you look at macro politics, that women, that certain positions actually made a preserve for women, right? So administrative positions, you know, positions that don't normally require so much force, you know, and work, are a preserve for women, you know, which is, it's not very bad, but also it kind of limits what we're able to do, because you find that a woman, okay, at the student union level or student representative council level, would say that the girls are more likely to go for, for public officer, or for her to go as the vice president, transport or logistics president, or anything which is really kind of like administrative, but not really president, secretary general, something that is out there. So that's kind of the information that was already there in the space, in the spaces that I was in. And so I even remember when I told someone that I wanted to stand, and said, why not just stand for vice president, because that's what all girls go for. That's actually a post for most girls. And even if you look at Zambia, the current vice president is female.
Yeah,
If you look at the United States, Kamala Harris, female. So it's more like the trend to say that, our space, our potential is actually just limited to an administrative position that doesn't require you to do as much work, that won't require you at the forefront of certain methods. So so that also just goes to show that it's a double-edged sword in the sense that you can have access to information that can influence us in a positive way or in a negative way. And it just depends on how we make use of it. And for me, it came to me as a challenge and a good one in the sense that I was like, okay, if that is the case, then why not, stand for president? It's at a time like this when we need girls to actually see an example of that. So for me, that negative perspective that was already out there, and I think even to a very large scale is out there in the entire world, came to me as a challenge that I wanted to get my hands on. Because I said, okay, why not? Why not respect that position? Then number two, if I'm to look at with regards to my personal development, because if we look at information as a whole, it's exposure, right? When we talk to information, we're talking about how exposed are you? So saying how much information do you have is just a translation of how exposed are you. And I was privileged, or I am privileged when I look at it, to say I had access to things like TED Talk, YouTube, and also even great books that help to guide me. Like I said, also setting a really good example by seeing other women who have walked, in the same path that I aspire to walk in. So, with the likes of Michelle Obama, I read one of her books. I read another book about just steps to take as a woman and the like, and just so many other not novels, but articles that spoke to women leadership and why it's important, why it's good, and how feminine leadership actually brings sanity to an institution. So having that exposure really did good to me, did good for me, sorry, in terms of showing me that it actually is possible to aim for such a position and to go that far in terms of representation as a female. I've always also, I don't want to labor into the other factors as well that inspired me, and that is obviously the likes of having mentorship and the support of other females. I think it's also very important because one of the narratives that's out there is that females do not support each other. I'm sure we've heard of this, and in so many different circles. Oh, you girls, you're always trying to bring each other down, blah, blah. It's true to a certain extent, but I feel that there's a certain, I don't want to say magic or power that is in the sisterhood. So when women come together and actually support a cause, it's most likely to actually come to pass because we are usually the majority, right? Although we are a minority and marginalized population, we actually are in most cases the majority. So for me, having a lot of that support from my fellow women also gave me that drive to go for what I wanted to achieve.
Yeah, that's that intersectionality of the pillars of peace really comes into it because you're thinking of good relations with your neighbors, that solidarity and that sisterhood. So, I just want to go to Queen Rafi, and you kind of touched on that in your initial conversation when you were talking about how some girls have been getting back to you and telling you about how they've been inspired and just emboldened by some of the conversations that you're holding, information that they didn't ordinarily have. And I just want you to get a little bit deeper into it. In your experience, have you seen information foster community solidarity and social security for women and other marginalized genders, and how so? So just building on that, can you just get a little bit more into it on how information has fostered community solidarity and social security for women?
Absolutely. the good thing about when women come together, and I agree with Tapiwa, there is an absolute magic in that. And I have seen this happen a lot of times when women come together and do stuff. For example, I know of this particular organization in Nigeria. I think it's called feminist.co, if I'm not mistaken. They were really, really like at the forefront, like I said, of the NSAS movement. And even though there was a bit of backlash that came with that, there were people who donated to the cause and everything. And the remaining of the money, what these ladies did was take this money and actually use it to send young girls to secondary schools, and not only send young girls to secondary schools, but they also attach these young girls to like mentors, right? So they had like big sisters who were guiding them, and not just, they didn't send them to like any, just like government schools or whatever, like private schools, and we're monitoring the progress of how these ladies were doing that. And we have a lot of other organizations as well who come together to do stuff. There is an organization as well in Nigeria, I think that is, I can't remember the name right now, it escapes my head, Stand to End Rape, I think, and they have been very, very vocal in coming together to help young women fight against the issues of sexual harassment or sexual exploitation, and also putting out like, you know, information and conversation about the situation around rape and how women can get help and how they can, you know, sort of better themselves and how they can advance as well. There is an organization as well who has also dedicated themselves specifically to the conversation of mental health. She Writes Woman, right? That is an organization that offers free mental health, not just to women as well, but like they have women at the top of their scale, and you have a lot of women coming together to actually help that particular organization to talk about the conversation of mental health. The amount of things that I have learned just going to the website of that particular organization alone has been mind-blowing for me. And it has also helped me to be able to help other people when I see other young ladies who are going through this situation, to actually be able to understand, oh, I read so and so place, this information has helped me. I think you'll be able to help you as well. There was a time that a friend of mine had reached out to me. A particular young lady was going through some mental issues, and we had to refer her to that particular organization. And I would never have been able to do that if a group of young women did not come together, bind themselves together to build that kind of organization. So yeah, there are so many examples of like women coming together to do stuff that I can, you know, give you examples of in Nigeria. This has just a couple of them. Like I even told you earlier, my friend and I also do our own small stuff in our own small space where we mentor women. So yeah, when women come together and try to, you know, give that information out and try to spread that information and try to make sure that it passes down, you always see the ripple effect of it. You always see how much more that space that you're trying to get women in opens up and more people are coming in. For the work that I do, for example, voiceover, I got onto my work because my friend wanted me to get in. She paid for a couple of courses that I even did. She's like, you have to get in. This space is a space that is important for you. She was actually put in that space by somebody who is not a woman, but she felt like, babe, this space, there is money here. I think you're going to make a lot of money. I think you have the skills to do it. Come into that space. So I'm even right now an example of exactly what you are asking me about, right? So when I've seen lots and lots of incidences where women come together, build up something, and is able to go down, trickle down to how other young women's lives have become better, and other young women can actually aspire to stuff, and other young women can be bold enough to talk about what they're going through, to talk about the issues that they are facing, and to talk about how they can be able to advance themselves, you know, like, so and it's why I'm very passionate about making sure that whatever experiences I have, whatever situation I'm going through, and whatever way I've been able to conquer them, I talk about them. I'm very, very, very vocal about that because it's so important to share that information. And one thing I've even realized is when you share the information, you never even know where that information is going to get to. You never know who is listening and who is going to tell somebody else and tell somebody else about what is happening. We have organizations as well in Nigeria who are sort of just, I think She Codes Africa, if I'm not mistaken, is the name. They're also dedicated to just training young women in the art of technology. Maybe it's UI, UX, maybe it's programming, and strictly just for young women, right? And I got my sister, even my younger sister of mine, into that. And now she's like really, really into UI and UX and all of that. So yeah, there's been a lot of examples that I can give you from Nigeria about women coming together and saying, we want more young women in this space, and this is how we are going to achieve it. And you can easily see that, you know, sort of become really, really interesting. Like the tech program I was telling you about that I got my younger sister in, she got in, I think last year, April, and she was in that particular program with another 100 girls as well. And those other 100 girls, they've all passed out now. My younger sister is trying to go further. And when I was even looking for somebody to mentor her further in the line, I just sent a message to another lady that I know on social media. Never spoke to her before. I was like, I have a younger sister. She's in this particular field. I would like if you help me mentor her. And she never said no. She's like, okay, fine. This is my number. Give it to your sister. We have a cohort of other young women that will be coming in soon. You can let her come in. So there's so many examples in Nigeria. I know people like to say, oh, women don't support women, women don't help women, but no, if women have not been opening up spaces and sharing the little minute information that we get, I don't even think that we'll be where we are right now. But there is so much more that can be done. There is so much more that can be done. And I'm really just looking forward to, you know, having conversations like this and also starting up in our own little spaces. I'm a very big fan of starting up in your own little space. If you have a younger sister, you have a friend, you have, you know, a neighbor that you know that can benefit from an information that you have to share. You definitely have to share.
Thank you so much. And I just feel like I can't go forward if I don't mention this, but this is the same situation with the Usawa Institute. 2 women co-founded this space, and it's helping empower so many women in so many different capacities and mostly digitally. So I think that's such an important thing, you know, that's an important narrative that we have, is this discredited view that women don't support each other, when actually in reality, there's so much support and solidarity that is among us. And I just want to ask the same question to Tapiwa, but I also just want you to tap into, you know, because I'm just, obviously I'm making assumptions here, you know, your generation has, you know, a lot to do with TikTok, you know, as a source of information and everything like that. Have you seen TikTok or any of those platforms as, you know, fostering information and community solidarity and social security for women within your own context?
Do you mind just repeating the question?
Oh, yes. So I just want to ask the same question. I asked Queen Rafi in her experience if she's seen information foster community solidarity and social security for women. But I want you to also just get into, you know, the digital space, you know, the TikTok and all that. That's what a lot of younger people are into and using as a source of information and connection. Are you seeing that kind of information sharing and solidarity and social security coming from such platforms?
Yeah, definitely. Like I say, well, the internet is the world of information. So they're both these negative and positive to it at the end of the day. I think it really just depends on the user at the end of the day, who they will choose, or which channel they will subscribe to, and which platform as well will they rely on for as a reliable source of information. So it's really quite difficult to sort of answer that question from that perspective. But I will say that I do see some strides or some efforts that are being put out there by women, either in their own individual capacity, to get what can I say, to get information out there to other women and to share opportunities as well. And I've also seen efforts that are put by different groups. So digital advocacy is something that's the in thing at the moment, whereby it has been sort of realized that, you know, it's if you can't beat them, join them, right? So we've seen a lot of NGOs that are jumping onto the digital space, you know, be it UNICEF, you know, everyone is just jumping into the boat and trying to see how we can manipulate that arena to influence positive change in our community. So with regards to TikTok, I know that UNICEF is there on TikTok. There are different institutions here in Zambia. We've got something called the Sister Foundation, that is a feminist organization that deals with women empowerment and the like. They're on Twitter. They regularly post updates on not just updates, but they regularly post key information that is useful for any woman. So that's with regards to governance, that's with regards to their health, and so many other different topics that are out there as well. We also have the likes of figures, right? So there are certain women who are doing great things. I'll just give them an examples for now, but we've got the likes of a lady called Mzingamelu. Mzingamelu is quite famous in Zambia, as she was one of the very first women to be a CEO of an international bank, and that's ABSA. So she was, or she is, sorry, CEO of the ABSA group of companies, and she's written a lot of books, and she has an amazing story. And she actually has even formed a foundation called When Females Lead, that is for empowering women, and she's done such a massive job. She's a really good example of someone who has made sure that as she is rising to the top, she's managed to also drag or pull other women up to the top with her. So we have figures like her who, on a very consistent basis, make sure that they continue to inspire people, women in particular, indirectly and also directly, with the posts that they make. But like I say, at the end of the day, it's really up to the user. It's really up to us as women as to how best can we manipulate the information that is already out there. Because at the end of the day, when we talk about the internet, right, internet has also somewhat become an equalizer, because we can't say that certain people or men only, have access to Facebook, or men only have access to Twitter and the like. It actually has sort of played the role of being an equalizer. So it's really up to the user at the end of the day, whether they will subscribe to certain things that will continue to build them or not. So yeah.
Yeah, you're very, very right there. This just reminded me of my primary school education. I remember, in Zimbabwean schools, they have like mottos, like school motto. And like one of the many actually primary schools that I went to, their motto was knowledge shines. And I think that's such an important thing. Like knowledge shines, knowledge empowers, knowledge emboldens, knowledge creates choice, knowledge creates opportunity. Information sharing is such an important tool. I'm gonna ask this next question to Queen Rafi. How can meaningful participation of women and girls and other marginalized genders be integrated into leadership in business ventures and community projects? How do we do that? Like create that meaningful participation of women and girls, make it an integral part of like business ventures and community leadership. How can we do that?
Wow, that's quite interesting. I think, having platforms like this, having conversations like this is definitely one of the first ways to start. And most importantly, talking about why it is important to be a part of these particular things that you listed. Those are ways that we can start to talk about it. And most importantly, tell people why it's important to be a part of it, talk about what they stand to gain when they become a part of it, and talk about how their lives are going to be improved. Because a lot of the times people don't get into these things because they're thinking, what is in it for me? I mean, at the base level, as a human being, we're very selfish. You want something to benefit you in a way. So talking about the benefits that they would derive from, becoming a part of this particular situation, things that you spoke about is the very first step to how we can get them to be more participating. And the people who are already participating, get them to talk about what they're doing in that space and how they're contributing in that particular space, and how they would further do many more things if we had many more women coming into that particular space. And most importantly, demystify how stressful or how difficult it is. For example, I really envy that Tapiwa is in the politics space. A lot of women in Nigeria cannot even begin to think about getting in there because they're like, oh my God, it's so stressful. How do I get people? How do I get myself? But it's the very first step is as simple as registering with a political party in Nigeria, for example. That is the most basic step to start. But a lot of women don't even know that because they're just looking at the long list of things that they want to do and not looking at the very first thing that they need to start with. So demystifying the fact that it is not as hard as we see it, and it can actually be broken down into very easy steps that we can all take part in and quickly get in there is a really good way to, get people, get young women and marginalized group into those kind of spaces. And most importantly as well, we cannot stop putting out the information on how and where they can actually participate in these things, because you have people who, okay, they know that they want to be part of this, they know they want to do this, but they don't even know how to go about it. They don't know how to start in the first place. So which is why, organizations like Usawa Initiative is really good, because they let people know these and these are places where you can get resources for how you can become what you want to become and how you can get into this very important business spaces. So I think those are some ways that we can actually begin to get those people in, demystify the fact that it is not as hard as people think it is, put out the information for how and where they can get involved in this thing, and most importantly, talk about why it is important and what they stand to gain when they come into those spaces.
Yeah, I like the building blocks that you made there, demystifying the information, sharing the information, the how, the ins and outs. And I'm going to give the same question to Tapiwa to say, as a young person, like, how do you think young people, particularly young women, can be integrated in these spaces, these business ventures, these community leadership roles, these political roles? How can they really be integrated in a way that is meaningful and sustainable to society and peace building?
Thank you so much, Danai. I think Queen Rafi really labored to explain the salient measures that need to be taken to get more young women, young people in general, to these spaces. And she's absolutely right. I think I'll just perhaps emphasize a little bit more on the aspect of demystifying. So it's a really, really, really big problem, because there's a lot of wrong, biased information that is out there, especially with regards to issues such as politics. Because, for example, just as an example, there's so many myths that are out there about politics, right? The moment someone talks about it, it's already something that's so untouchable, right? And this is not just restricted to Southern Africa. I think it's everywhere, actually. We have really demonized, some of these topics and some of these things by giving them a patriarchal image, right? Where it's something that's just for a limited or select kind of people. We have also, because of corruption, because of, I remember earlier on you were talking about colonization and so many of these other factors, they really, it really has distorted a lot of things, right? And so there really is a need for that mindset shift, a paradigm shift, rather, in general, for society as a whole, not just for women, for society as a whole. We need to change the way in which we view some of these matters. If we are to talk about politics, for example, when we talk about politics, we're not just talking about corruption. It's not just corruption. It's not just human rights violations. It's representation, simple as that. So if we're able to make this messaging very clear to anyone, it would be good. And women play a really key role in terms of how society starts to have a mindset shift, because women, I feel, are natural teachers. You will find that actually most of the morals that are learned in society, most of the cultures that are set by society are those that women have taught their children. So women play a really good role, because once they get to understand some of these salient topics, once they get a really good understanding of the importance of some of these measures, the importance of a woman getting employed, the importance of a woman becoming financially independent, the importance of her taking part in politics and other things such as voting and the like. If we have, you know, the women in our society being able to teach their children these things, then we're headed in a really good direction. So I just also wanted to add that then definitely there has to be affirmative action when it comes to certain things. There's so many bottlenecks and so many barriers that are there. Some of them are structural barriers that actually stop young people and women from accessing certain spaces, right? So they, for some reason, there's so many deliberate measures that are put there to hinder women from actually getting into some of these spaces. It might not be out there to say that, no, actually, we do not want women here. But then there are just certain things, even simple conversations that take place in workplaces, that take place in our communities, that would naturally make someone back down from wanting to participate. So we need to put affirmative action in our constitution, for example, whereby we make it not just for women, by the way, for any for the marginalized communities, even the disabled people with disabilities. You know, we need to be able to come up with systems that are deliberate in terms of making sure that there's an inclusion of women in these spaces. So, for example, we have here we have what we call ward development committees and the like, all these small community structures. They should be an affirmative action to say they should at least be the presence of 5%, you know, of the leadership should consist of women. And these women are not just picked at random, but those who are deserving of certain positions, even in our businesses. We should move away from, because they say the higher you go, the fewer women there are, right? So you'd find that in any organization, there are these barriers that have been put, you know, such as not, you know, promoting a woman. Women are not getting raises in their jobs. Women are not getting promotions in their jobs because you hear different excuses like, no, she has to go and take care of her family. You know, she can't earn more than, you know, her husband. She can't earn more than her colleague. You know, certain things. You know, these structural barriers that have been put up. But if we had affirmative action that says that, in fact, for this business to be registered, they need to be at least one female within your board. You know, such things that can ensure that there's a deliberate intention to put women in these spaces because they're needed. Like I said, female leadership brings sanity to any. So yeah, I'll end with that.
Thank you so much. And you just made me think of a few things. I've been reading a lot about women's political participation, and I read an interesting view that was saying, you know, maybe what we need to do is to stop putting a minimum number of women and actually put a cap on the maximum number of men. And I found that very interesting to say, you know what, the problem is that we keep on saying, oh, there should be at least 5 women in this group out of 10 or whatever. But how about, because we see that the problem is the oversaturation of men within these leadership roles, how about we put a cap on the number of men that can get there so that we can actually promote more women entering these without necessarily putting the burden on women, because we constantly do that and say, okay, there should be a minimum number, this, that, and the other. And let's see if the outcome changes. Because, for example, in Zimbabwe, there's something that is in our parliament. The parliament is made up of 210 members, but they added 60 additional seats for women. But these seats are uncontested, and these seats, these people don't have constituencies. So when they're now speaking in parliament, most of the time, their opinions are not really valued or heard, because people ask, what constituency are you representing? You know, or, you know, you realize that the number of women that are being put within these affirmative action roles are actually women who you know, for lack of a better word, docile, or women that just don't threaten the patriarchal agenda, don't threaten, you know, the party politics system. And the ones that really do, most of the time, they're really pushed out for having independence of thought, for wanting progress, especially in corrupt African countries where, you know, there's a lot of things that are happening that should not be happening ordinarily in that way. So if a woman then challenges maybe the budget or something, then she's seen as a threat. So instead of having women who are threat to the system. They just place, because it's done in a party through a party system, so they place women who can easily conform, who fall within these gender dynamics that we've been acclimatized as normal to view and visualize as normal. So this is such an interesting conversation, just to see, like, what if we reconceptualize this entire thing and maybe put a cap on the number of men and stop actually putting so much pressure on a minimum number of women to say, well, at least there should be 5 CEOs within the tech industry. I don't know, whatever it is. But I just want to go to Queen Rafi and get a little bit into the podcasting environment. I just want to know, while you're researching topics for your podcast, what is the most requested topic by your audience, and why do you think that is? Why does your audience really gravitate towards that specific theme or that specific topic?
Looks like we've lost Queen Rafi. She mentioned to me she is trying to rejoin.
Oh, okay. So in the meantime, we will go to Tapiwa. I have a different question for you, Tapiwa. From the work that you've been doing with the different organizations and the thematic groups that you've been working with, what type of information flows are most effective in speaking about human rights? Like, which platforms? Is it in person? Is it online? Is it a specific website? Is it a specific social media platform? What type of information flows are most efficient when you're discussing issues to do with human rights? Oh, did we lose Tapiwa as well? Can anybody hear me?
Looks like
Welcome
we
to
did.
Africa. Welcome to Africa.
Yeah, it really be like that sometimes. But yeah, this is such an interesting conversation. When you talk about peace, most of the time, I mean, before I really got to talking to Erica and planning for this symposium and reading the background on, peace and stuff like that, I mostly thought peace is largely to do with war. You're like, okay, what is conflict resolution in war situations or in conflict situations? But I'm realizing more and more, like, how peace is something that is all around us, something that is necessary for us to function as a society, because we get to share this. Even though I don't necessarily fully conform to this, there's this concept of the social contract. You give something into the community and they give something back, some form of quid pro quo. How do we share this world? And peace is such an important thing, because if there's domestic violence, if there's sexual harassment, for example, then like life becomes a little bit more difficult for the group that is suffering from those like inequalities, or from those I don't know. And I think also when we even talk about marginalized or minorities, minorities for us, when we think of the fact that women are, for example, in Zimbabwe, the statistical majority, we are actually a minoritized group. We're a marginalized group simply because of our gender. So yeah, this is such an interesting thing. And if there's anyone in the audience who would like to add something in the meantime while we wait for our panelists to try and get back into the conversation, that would be really good. Just unmute your mic and say what you need to say. Get your piece in. Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna go first. I think, and then I think Sian as well also is gonna speak. But I think for me, one thing I'm really finding out is that when you have peace in your own home, you are then seen in the world as being aggressive, as being pushy, as being, wanting a certain level of lifestyle, certain desires. But it's because it's the peace at your home that's giving the confidence to go out in the world and ask for the same conditions that you have in your community. And I think so many times we take it for granted that when you are it's kind of like privilege. Yeah, I think like we could put it that way. Like sometimes when you are privileged to have peace, and then when you go into a volatile situation, asking yourself, why are they fighting, or why is there conflict? You expect everyone else to be peaceful, whereas it's not always the case. And I think looking at it as well, you recognize that the moment that people are in a space of peace, they are more confident and they are more willing to step outside their box and outside their work on or a place of ability to be able to function in the society and community, because in a way that peace and brings that confidence and trust, and you also want to see people experiencing what you're experiencing. I don't know if that makes sense. You know, the moment that you feel strong, validated, peace, you feel like I need the rest of the world to have the same experience. And so I feel like it's the more communities are at peace, the more we'll find more communities fighting to have peace around the world. But I think also sort of goes back.
Yeah. Yeah. Anybody else? Just unmute your mic and get in on the conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's been very interesting conversations and making us reflect on our definitions of peace and what we consider peace to be. I think one of the things that just came into my head is a Zimbabwean woman, and I realized that a lot of times when I'm traveling or when I'm talking to non-Zimbabweans, I always refer to Zimbabwe as very peaceful or a peace-loving nation, you know. And I think this conversation makes me really reflect on that, because I look at all the other elements, minus the fact that we don't have like civil war or unrest, right, happening at the current moment. But when I look at the political, economic, and the economic situation within my country, it makes me realize that we really are not peaceful. Yes, we are peaceful in terms of our individual characteristics, you know, but then in terms of the nation, I think there really is an absence of peace. That's reflected in the amount of people that are leaving our borders in search of more peaceful and more economic sustainable environments, right? Because there's no peace here generally. So I really am thankful to the speakers today for just enlightening us and making us question, which is really like a scary thing also when you think about it, because now you like question everything. Yeah, I just wanted to put that into context, you know.
I hope I'm not butchering your name, Musa. Go right in, please.
Okay, hi everyone. Thank you for this opportunity. It has been a great pleasure to be part of you. In this regard of gender equity, and here in Lesotho, I would say part of hearts, most of us are aware of it, but the problem still stays in the rural areas. Like there's one of the biggest NGOs in here, which is called Help Lesotho. I was a participant in this past month. It offers a program which is called Leaders in Training. It is very, very, very powerful training, and I wish most of the youth in here can just participate in it. It's just, I don't know, it makes a huge difference in the youth of Lesotho, and big ups to it. If you have a chance, please go through it, check. help Lesotho, and you will see how amazing it is. And in this program, which is called Leaders in Training, it offers sessions such as gender equality, HIV and AIDS, parenthood, early marriage, unplanned pregnancy. There's flyers all over. So it's opening our eyes a lot. You know, most of us are aware of this gender equality and everything. So yeah, thank you so much for this very huge presentation. Um, Thank you for giving me this opportunity to be part of you guys. I've been hearing from you since the beginning of this presentation. I'd like to say thank you so much and thank you, appreciate you.
Thank you so much. And do you mind just writing the name of the organization in the chat box so that people can be able to search for it? And thank you so much for plugging us right there. I just want to move the conversation right. Pardon?
I'll just do so. I'll send the name of the NGO on the chat box.
Yes, please. Yes, please. I just want to take the conversation right back to where we were. I wanted to ask Queen Rafi, you know, when I get into, you know, your podcast, while you're researching your topics for your podcast, what is the most requested topic or the requested theme? What does your audience really want to know about, and why do you think that is?
Wow, that's quite interesting. Because my podcast is a personal journal, even though I talk about situations around society and culture and a couple of other topics, I realized that I get topics more around how I'm able to do stuff, or how I'm able to navigate stuff, or how I'm able to develop myself, quote unquote. So those are kind of the topics that I get asked around. So I would get questions around, for example, maybe how I'm able to speak how I speak, for example. I've gotten a number of questions about that. I've never even done an episode on that. I think I should. I've gotten questions about that from young ladies. I would love to speak how you speak, or I would love to create a podcast, how you create this podcast. And I would love to be able to articulate my thoughts, how you articulate your thoughts. And so most of the questions I get are usually around self-development, how they can also develop themselves in a particular field, or how they can also develop themselves in a field they think that I'm doing well, even though sometimes I'm struggling, so those are the kind of questions that I get. And sometimes I get questions around, some of the societal issues that goes on in Nigeria, and maybe sometimes around pop culture. I try to stay very a little bit away from pop culture, except I see that there is a positive way that I can talk about pop culture in a way that I can connect it to self-development, or in a way that I can talk about it in a way that it's not just about the fluff, but there's a couple of stuff in there that is important for people to learn about. That's when I dabble into that. But yeah, those are some of the questions that I get asked. And then I also get asked a lot. This is so weird, but I get asked a lot about the young women, especially young Muslim women, about marriage and how to handle that with being in the media. I get asked that question a lot. And I think I've done quite a number of episodes about that, and I've also sort of done a couple of Instagram lives about that, just talking about how as a Muslim woman you can still balance having a career in the media and still be able to function completely in the society that we are.
Wow, that's amazing. I think people just want to be, people want to become, they want to be. It's such an important thing. And thank you for sharing your platform. My next question is specific to Tapiwa. Within your work, what type of information flows are most effective when you're speaking about human rights? Is it in-person conversations that are most effective? Is it online? Is it on social media, specific social media platforms? Can you just get into some of the sources or type of information flows that are mostly effective when you're discussing issues to do with human rights? And why do you think that is?
Okay, really good question that I've actually never really put much thought into. I can't say there's one that is most effective, but I can maybe give a couple that I feel are working. Definitely social media is one of them. Definitely social media is one of them. I found that our lives, at the moment really revolve around our phones. And so if we can actually take advantage of that, take advantage of the few people who follow us, and the people who are willing to click on our pages and the like, it's the best way in which we can spread positive messaging. But so yes, I have been consistent for a very long time. For anyone who would have my contact, they'll know that most of what I post on my WhatsApp status, if it has not got to do with current affairs, then it definitely has to do with human rights, or it has to do with Pan-Africanism, because I figured that this is where most young people in particular spend their time. So why not make that 30 seconds, 30 seconds that they have to watch a WhatsApp status be worthwhile, and they actually get to learn something, anything, even sexual reproductive health related issues. I still do post them intentionally and consistently on my WhatsApp. Also on my Facebook, from time to time, I do make deliberate posts that speak to the things or the causes that I stand for. And with some of the organizations that I work with, we have made it a point to create virtual spaces and conduct. Can you guys hear me? Okay, so with the organizations that I work with, for example, the Southern African People Solidarity Network, which is SAPSN, they're the ones who convene civil society organizations yearly when we have the SADC summit. So when we have our SADC leaders meeting, that is the presidents that fall under the SADC or that subscribe to SADC meeting, we also have a side meeting for civil society organizations and ordinary people. So I have taken advantage of that by actually, coming up with virtual platforms as well for young people across the region to actually be able to access, the information that is being discussed in these meetings. So in a nutshell, yes, technology, internet goes a very long way in terms of delivering the messaging that I have. But that does not take away the fact that grassroots mobilization is very, very, very important. Going back down to the grassroots, because those are the people who are usually affected the most by many of these issues. Not to say that people who have phones are privileged, they usually are, but you'd find that those who don't have, the privilege of having phones are those who fall victim to the many injustices that we have in society. Or to even talk about menstrual health, for example, if we didn't take our time to go into communities, take our time to go into these remote areas where people rely on a radio for them to listen to the news and the like, then I feel like we really wouldn't be as effective. So whilst my community engagements at grassroots level are still very few, I have made a deliberate effort this year, especially to make, to do more of those in-person conversations and in-person meetings as well to spread my messaging.
Yeah, that is incredible. I think that, I just thought of this thing that I read. This is not an official thing, but I read somewhere that people have a very short attention span, right? Especially now, people, their attention span is becoming shorter and shorter. So how was do you have an idea of some of the ways that we can capture people's short attention span? Is it like a little infographic? Is it like a 30-minute video? Is it a little TikTok video? What gets people's attention, their short attention span rather?
Is that for me? Or
yeah. For you to
okay. It's hard because it wasn't for me. I actually believe that my attention span has even gone down to 10 seconds at this point. I can't even finish some people's statuses, to be honest. I just find myself, okay, next, type situation. So it's actually really, really, really hard. And there are definitely some tips and tricks that you have to put in place. And one of them is knowing the trends that are out there. A lot of NGOs and CSOs would be doing a disservice to themselves if they do not work on their media marketing and coming up with these strategies and being intentional about it, because that's where most people are spending most of their time. So coming up with catchy headlines, catchy opening statements. For me, I always think about it in the sense of, if I were reading this, is this something that I'd actually want to engage with? If you know what I mean? Is this something that I'd actually take my time to read and peruse through? And if it's not interesting to me, then I won't post it, because then what's the point? So you need to know your audience, use the language that is out there, make use of the trends that are out there. If it means, doing a TikTok dance for menstrual health, hey, do it, because that's what's out there. That's what people are doing. So it's very, very tricky. It's very, very, very tricky. But being deliberate on putting a strategy. And number two as well, being consistent. It's something that's very difficult, something that I also struggle with. I feel like Queen Rafi could get into more details about how difficult it is to be a content creator and to be consistent, in putting up your posts. But it's also very, very important that we're consistent with our messaging. So like I said, for me, if anyone has had my line for the longest time, if you've had me on your contact list, then definitely if you're going to click on the status that I've put up, it's a picture of me doing a community engagement or a video of me talking about child rights or children's rights or whatever it is, that speaks to the causes that I believe in, because I've been consistent with that. So the more consistent you become, the more reliable people perceive you to be. Because if they know that this person has been talking about the same thing over and over again, or this organization has been posting about this over and over again, then it's definitely something that is true, and it's a reliable source of your information.
Absolutely. I love that. I love the personal experience as well. And I think I'm just going to also pose the same question to Queen Rafi, just to say, how do you capture the audience? How do you ensure that the information is effectively shared to the community? How do you do that, especially in this era where there's so much information out there? My mom is constantly talking about it. She's like, I can watch TV on my phone, in my car, on the TV, in the house, whatever, on so many gadgets. How do you capture the information? How do you capture the attention of people who have multiple sources of information, literally in the palm of their hands?
Man, I think that Tapiwa was very right when she talked about the struggles of it. For example, I'm in my early 30s and I don't understand TikTok. I'm sorry. I cannot do a dance.
Me too. Me too.
I cannot do a dance to save my life. I think that what I have learned in terms of sharing information is, first and foremost, make sure that your information is catchy and you're not trying to waste anybody's time. Because like we've all established, people's attention span is very short. There's so many things that are calling for their attention. So keep your information short, which is why even on my podcast, I have episodes that are as short as 30 seconds. I believe in not wasting time. Just go straight forward to where you want to deliver. Don't fluff around. Don't waste time saying hello, blah, blah. Just give the information. If they know that if they come to you, you're getting exactly what they are coming there for, you will always have them coming back. So if you have any information to give, just deliver it as quickly as possible and use as many platforms as you can. I'm not going to say use all the platforms because you're going to get yourself exhausted. And if you get yourself exhausted, you end up not passing out the real information that you want to pass out. So I would just say, put out the information on as many platforms as you can. That's what you can do. And to each platform, also learn what works for each platform. I mean, like I said, I can't do a dance to save my life. There is no way I'm going to go on TikTok knowing that I can't do any of these challenges and then try to start writing things. So nobody's going to listen to me on TikTok there. You know what sells on TikTok. is the dance challenges, is the short videos. So if you're going to be on TikTok, that's what you put there. On Instagram, for example, it used to be pictures. So if you want to put out information, you have to make the graphics really, really interesting, something that would make somebody stop and not say next, like Tapiwa was talking about. Let it be catchy enough. And now that we know that it's video, maybe you want to put your cover art as something that is very enticing, so they're able to click. And once they click on the video, let it be that your video is immediately sending out that information as quickly as possible. And it's on Twitter. You already know how Twitter functions. Twitter is about the writing. So you want to write your stuff as concise as possible, and you want to put up that link, so whatever it is that you've written, you can see that they're able to click on it. Because something I noticed as well when it comes to information is some people want to use the same information that they put on TikTok and put the same information without editing, nothing, the same thing on Instagram, the same, like, nobody is going to engage with that, because every different platform has what they're very, very known for. So you have to tweak the information as it will be pertaining to that particular platform. That's what you need to do. And I think for me, that's what I've been able to do. And I only restrict myself, like I say, to as many platforms as I can, because there are some platforms I don't know what's going on. I don't understand it. If I'm able to someday or hire somebody, fantastic. But for now, I restrict myself to those platforms that I understand, and I try to maximize those platforms. Because honestly, if you want to stretch yourself thin across all the other platforms, you might really, really exhaust yourself, and you might end up not passing out the information that you intend to.
Yeah. So the word of the day is keep it simple, keep it short, keep it concise. Can we just get your final word in, Queen Rafi, before we conclude this? And then when you're done, Tapiwa, give us your final word in. Yeah.
Thank you very much. This has been interesting, the free flow of information. I must say, the first time I came across the conversation, I was like, how am I going to do this? But I have realized that we all have things that we're doing now only to spaces. And what we are doing now only to spaces is what would contribute to the larger conversation of getting us closer to gender equality, of getting us closer to those SDG goals, to getting us closer to having a positive peace environment. And so whatever it is that we can do in our own little space positively, or we are already doing, should not be something that we relent on, and we continue to fly the flag as much as possible. And most importantly, break down the barriers of censorship around key information that other young women need to have as well. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you. And Tapiwa?
Thank you so much. Wow. Final word. I think go back to the sentiments that are really close to my heart, and that is the inclusion of women in different spaces, not just political spaces, in businesses, in organizations, anywhere. This world is for everyone. There's enough room, for, they say that the sky is big enough for every bird to fly. So and I feel like, yes, definitely the change begins with us as people, as a person. Are you inclusive in what you do? Even in your friendships, in your circles and the like. Are you fair in the way in which you conduct yourself as a human being, as a person? Do you view people with an equality lens, or do you still have your own personal cultural norms, toxic cultural norms that you hold on to? So a lot of introspection has to go in with regards to us making any progress at all. Africa has done itself a really good service by losing her identity, have no sense of identity anymore as Africans. And so we really need people who are able to introspect and hold on to values that are positive, hold on to norms that are positive. And if if we really, really think about it, yes, colonization did come and mess up a whole lot of things, definitely. And one of the things was one of the should I say myths that were brought about was the fact that in our societies or in our cultures we do not respect women at all. And yet in actual fact, women have always played fundamental roles It just depends on how much importance has been tagged to the role of a woman. And so if we really look deep into ourselves, deep into where we are coming from as a continent, we'll see that there's so much more that women have consistently been offering and so much more that they can continue to offer, such as educating, you know, the next generation. It's really, really, really women who holds that responsibility and will do a good job in terms of shaping new narratives for our continent. So yeah, I think that's what I'll think. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Tapiwa. This has been such an amazing afternoon. So much learning that has happened. I mean, I think for everybody in this room, I think we have really reshaped our understanding of peace and peace building and gendered peace and the dynamics that it comes with. Even the interconnectedness of the 8 pillars, you know, these are things that exist all around us. These are things that are like integral within our communities, within our societies, and our day-to-day lives. So thank you to every single speaker, Arno, Erica, Elizabeth, Chinga, Tapiwa, Queen Rafi, Calvin, Mosa, everybody who's managed to speak. And most importantly, I would like to thank everybody who has been able to come in and just listen and, you know, make this possible, be the audience, and stick it through even if it was just for a few minutes. Thank you to everybody who's managed to be here with us and to support us. And this information is definitely going to be available on our YouTube channel, and we're going to continue to have this conversation outside of this platform. I wish everybody a wonderful rest of your day. I hope that you have really, really benefited from this conversation. And I also just want to thank the planning team, you know, the people that made this possible. I just want to say thank you to Erica, Calvin, Arno for making this possible for us. And I look forward to more engagement. And if you're in this platform and you've got other work that you're doing, don't hesitate to plug us. If you've got time right now before you log out, you can just put the information in the chat box and we can have a look at it, or you can just speak to us through our social media platforms so that we can always collaborate and work together, because, you know, we are always as the Usawa Institute in the business of sharing our light. So yeah, thank you everybody and have a wonderful day.